My husband, 29M, knocked out my brother, 28M, for calling me, 26F, a whore, and my parents want me to choose. What is the right choice? This past weekend, me and my husband were over at my parents' house for a BBQ. The day was going great until my brother, for some reason, started to have a go at me, calling me names and belittling me. My husband pulled my brother aside and had a talk with him, and the insults stopped. An hour or so later, we were standing around talking with some friends and family members, and my brother came up to me and told me, "I'm a whore." His exact words were, "You know you are a fucking whore, right?" He said it loud enough for almost everyone at the party to hear. All I saw was my husband next to me look at me. Then I felt a push to the side, my husband stepping in front of me, and the next thing was my brother out cold on the ground with blood on his face. All I heard is my mother yelling and my husband saying, "You don't talk to my wife like that. I warned you already." Before I continue, my husband didn't hurt me. He didn't push me hard or anything like that. Don't know how to describe it, but it was like a push that someone will give you when they are trying to pass. I went like one step back, that is all. I am not mad at my husband. I'm mad at my brother. The whole day he was demeaning me, insulting me, belittling me. Don't know where this came from, as he has never talked to me like that or to anyone that I know of. The bigger problem I have it that I have to choose, either my husband or my parents. My parents are pissed and have given me an ultimatum. I either leave my husband and divorce him or they cut me off completely. My husband doesn't give a crap that they are mad. The only thing he is mad about it that he only got one punch in his words. I love my husband and don't want to lose him, but I also don't want to lose my parents. They have supported me through a lot and have always been there for me. I know they are serious, as this is the first time they have ever issued me with an ultimatum. They also threatened my husband with the assault charge, but he doesn't care and welcomed them to do it. I'm stuck between a decision that will change my life forever, and I'm panicking. I have received messages for friends and other family members that have given me support and condemn my husband, but they are leaning more on the support side. Update. My husband is my choice, and I have no intentions of leaving him at all. Never had. My parents invited me over to have a talk with them, but they wanted me to come alone as they didn't want my husband at their house. My husband refused to let me go alone and said if he isn't going, then he won't allow me to. He basically said, with you alone there, they will just pile on you and that I won't let happen. So we went together. My parents wasn't happy to see him, and my mother wanted to say something until my husband told her he isn't there for them, but me, and if he is forced to leave, I will leave with him. I agreed with him. Reluctantly, they agreed. My brother was there as well. He has a broken nose and chipped teeth and refused to look at me, or my husband. He just kept looking at the ground even while talking. Apparently, what happened with my brother is that he broke up with his girlfriend a month ago. It's more like she broke up with him. Don't know the reason, don't care. I wasn't aware of this as we aren't close like that. According to him, the reason he had a go at me this weekend is because my life. According to him, my perfect life with my husband kept popping up on his feeds and he got jealous. Everything on my social media is with my husband. I don't really use it for anything else, but his feed was full of my posts, and that set him off as I had something that he didn't. It got worse when he overheard me and my mother talking when I had a discussion with her over children. Me and my husband is currently trying to have a baby, and that just made everything worse in his head. His life was falling apart, and mine was going perfectly, and I had and was trying for have what he wanted with his ex. He said he didn't take my husband seriously when he pulled him aside, and my husband warned him. I seriously don't know why he went after me, as nothing he said was true in any sense. And I did ask him why he said those things. He refused to answer me. I asked him why the whore comment because he knows my husband was my first in everything. And it has only been him all these years. He refused to answer. I asked him if trying to have a baby with my husband makes me a whore as it involves sex. And he just left the room. I asked my parents why they didn't step in and tell my brother to leave or stop. My dad said he wanted to, but my mother told him to leave my brother be, as he is not actually hurting anyone. The same with the ultimatum, the wanted to protect my brother. I asked what about me, and they were silent. All my father said was the ultimatum was my mother's idea, and he went along with it. This is basically where we are at the moment. A lot more was said, but I don't think it matters. My husband did apologize to my parents for what happened, but refused to apologize to my brother. When my mother asked him to apologize to my brother, he outright said no. He won't apologize for standing up for me, and my brother got what he deserved. He was warned and didn't listen. My mother said it still doesn't excuse him for hitting my brother. My husband asked my dad, what will he do if someone called his wife a whore? My father said, I will have a talk with that person, but will never hit someone. My husband laughed and told my dad he is a weak willed, spineless man if he allows someone to demean his wife like that. That got my mom red in the face. I could see her get angry. That is when I told my husband it's time to leave. I told my parents that I will be going low contact with them, and the ultimatum they gave me broke the trust I had in them. I understand they wanted to protect my brother, but in doing that, they hurt me. This seemed to take all the anger out of my mother. They asked if I will be cutting them out completely, and I told then, that is up to them. I don't want anything to do with my brother at the moment as he can't even apologize for what he said to me. I told them, if they can respect my wishes, we will see. When we got up to leave, my husband went over to my parents and actually still greeted them politely, but told my dad, it's time grow a backbone. I don't know what I saw, but I think it was shame in my mother's face because my dad looked at my mother and she looked away from him. This is where we are at the moment. My husband on the way back home apologized for possibly escalating things, but told me it was time someone told my dad the truth. He said whatever punishment comes, he will take and deal with any fallout. I don't need to worry or stress about anything.
My 38F husband, 40M, pushed me when I asked him about a weird text he received and refused to show me his phone. I am unsure what to do now. My husband and I have been married over 10 years. The last several years have been very, very difficult for us. We had been trying to conceive and failing, and this put a lot of stress on our marriage. I have been very vocal and public about our fertility struggles offline and online. After many rounds of IVF, I finally became pregnant, and I am currently in my second trimester. From the beginning, the pregnancy has been really rough on me. I had severe morning sickness, high blood pressure, and my pregnancy was considered high risk. Our marriage has been under a lot of stress, and this is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had sex once since I got pregnant, mostly because I feel completely shitty most days. Earlier today, my husband's phone kept pinging with notifications. I instinctively picked it up to see who it was messaging him. The messages were from a female friend of his. She is a relatively new friend. From what I briefly saw before he walked into the house, he had been taking out the garbage and snatched the phone from my hands. It seemed he had been complaining about me and our sex life to this friend. I confronted him and asked him to open the message so I could read what he'd been saying about me. He got really angry and pushed me hard when I tried to take the phone back from him, and I fell on the floor. He immediately apologized and helped me get back up, and I could tell he felt really bad. When I again tried to ask him about the message, he still wouldn't show me the phone, kept deflecting, saying it was nothing. He was just complaining to a friend that the pregnancy has been difficult, and that was all. I am not convinced. The texts that I saw briefly were more than what he was letting on. He refused to show me his phone for proof on the grounds of, we need to have trust. Update. I planned on going to the hospital for a checkup when he was out. He caught wind of my hospital visit plans and insisted he comes with me because he didn't want me going alone, saying he was worried about me and the baby. He was with me the entire time, so I couldn't say anything to the nurses or doctors. Baby is doing okay, but my blood pressure was high and I was recommended to go on bed rest. I am back at home now. He's been complaining and making remarks about how hard this pregnancy has been the entire time. It is incredibly frustrating to hear him complain, but after yesterday I don't want to push his buttons, so I'm keeping quiet about all of it, the phone text included. When he left to the gym, I called my OB/GYN's clinic and left a voicemail explaining the truth behind my fall today. I probably won't hear back until tomorrow at the earliest. Update. After he went to sleep last night, I began gathering and packing essential documents, as some of you suggested. Even though I thought I was moving quietly, he woke up and asked what I was doing. I told him I couldn't sleep, so I decided to pack essentials, as I thought it might be useful in case we ever needed to go to the hospital again for an emergency. He agreed it was a good idea. But then he started going through my bag and found my passport in there and flipped out. I tried to say I was being overly cautious and pack anything we might need, but he wasn't buying it. He started yelling, asking me if I was planning on leaving him. I said no. He called me a liar. I had never seen him so angry before. I turned and started to walk away when he got in my face, like I sometimes do to try and de-escalate. But he grabbed me by the hair and neck and pulled me. Somehow, I managed to get out of his grip and ran to the bathroom, closed the door and locked it. He started banging on the door, telling me to come out, screaming obscenities and threats. He was kicking the door and trying to break it down. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't call the police. The neighbours must have heard all the banging and screaming because I was told someone on the street called to report a disturbance. Eventually, the police arrived, arrested him, and took me to the hospital. I am at the hospital. I was admitted to be monitored for my blood pressure. Thankfully, my baby is okay. I have been visited by a social worker, hospital counsellor, and my OB/GYN, who got my voicemail and called to report it first thing this morning, only to find out I was at the hospital. I was informed I got a spot at a women's shelter and will be moved there when I am discharged, and a caseworker will be assigned to me.
AITAH for refusing to go to confession so I can take communion in my brother's wedding. I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M. And we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother, Luke, is engaged to his GF of a year, Emma, 28F. She is nice, I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it has always been a sibling joke that I am truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her, she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be, and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I'm just polite and civil. Always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it, but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church. Fine by me. Then she requested that immediate family submits their dress plannings so she could check it fits the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope? You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate on. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she has not taken it well. For the most part, I avoid her, as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her, for taking communion, one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all immediate family is doing it, and it will look bad if I don't. I told her, sure, fine. Then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but won't do confession. She said if this was going to be my attitude, I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understand my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices. But I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all of the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. Update 1. Things have moved, but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise, but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young, but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses, her being very my way or the highway with younger people, so she has issues for sure. And today, we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother, Robert, is very no-nonsense, and he has never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think he should have to intervene, because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot, since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today, we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking, to be honest. She asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion, and Emma said that she was her elder, and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings, and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion, and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke, on the other hand, was staring angrily at Robert and I, but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen, he came out as gay and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins. He was going to hell. He needed to find his way. The whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church, but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman, and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined going. Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy, or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh, and yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counselling, or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama, but now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help, since he was her favourite grandchild, and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believe this, and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So, Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from these places and so had Robert. And they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid. Our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid and say Luke lied. Even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there, and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimetres smaller than Luke, and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her, and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him, and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life, and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us, explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a shit show, a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened, they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reigning all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody, really, and he just tried to be the centre of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was going to marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler, and for many years only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was going to marry his now wife through a text, but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I am biased, maybe I am selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Update 3. I want to start this by saying that Grandma is in better spirits now. I am overwhelmed by the amount of people supporting her and very grateful for it, even if it's online. I have talked about this on some chats and DMs, but please know the situation with Emma is not about her being parentified or her family being strict Catholics. It's just her being her. They were already going to get premarital counselling. An extra was added. Oh, all cousins also don't live in the same city or town. Some are a bit longer than others, but we keep in touch through the chat. The reason for the update is mainly to let people know Grandma is okay. Her health is fine, and she had a blast with my cousin Sarah. I also want to update on what has happened with the cousins and the maternal side of our family. Some of our paternal cousins from Grandma's side have relented and feel a bit bad on excluding Luke from things. So the compromise was met on he can be invited to everything, just don't force people to interact. These cousins are mainly on the older side, and have soft spots for the youngsters. My youngest cousin Sarah said she was okay with it all, but she wanted them to keep him away from her since she can't stand him anymore. Our maternal side was a shit show, because of course we need one. Some of them were very upset, but others told me I should try to understand where he was coming from. My mum was the one that told them everything, and some told her she is at fault for making Robert the star of the family. This was so uncalled for, but brought some issues in my family, particularly when one of my maternal cousins asked me if I could behave enough if I am seated at the same table as Luke for his wedding. It makes us doubt ourselves, but really, this is a cousin that Robert has bailed from almost bankruptcy 2 times, and he's the problem? I haven't said much about my sister Lucy, since she voiced nothing different before. She was always very close to Luke and even had a great relationship with Emma before the debacle. She decided to be out of it because she was so disappointed. While she was never made to babysit or anything like that, she was always so into Luke since he was her baby brother. She loved him the most, and I know that because she literally told me when I was a kid. We have a good relationship now because her kids are my buddies, but it was rough for a while before that. She was upset about the whole thing, but when our maternal family, or at least a part, started excusing Luke, she lost it. She is a very calm person, the type you don't expect a bad word out of. But she lost it, and I think it was the last straw on the cold bucket for Luke. She sent a massive message about what has been happening, detailing every single thing, and daring people to kind of come at her if they disagreed. She made sure to include every single nasty thing, every bad word, every eye roll. She sent it to so many people because she was tired of the half-information telephone game. She is upset at me because my refusals made this happen, and she said she knows she shouldn't, but she needs time to fix her feelings, so she is not speaking with me right now. My parents decided they were out of the wedding and told Luke he is on his own. There was never a monetary issue. They were willing to contribute, but both Luke and Emma are pretty well off and was no need for that. Now, to what maybe most people want to know, and the only conflict I am interested about anymore. My grandma is feeling better. Sarah being with her was very positive. It was lovely to see the eldest and youngest of our family so in tune, but then again, they have always been. She requested that Sarah invited Luke to her birthday party, December, and after a lot of back and forward, he is going to be invited. We will see if he comes or not. A small parenthesis, I showed my grandma the joke of the knife, sword, etc. She was so giddy. Thank you. I mentioned before that Robert would pick up Sarah if she needed. It is still true. What I might have not mentioned is that she of course gets a weird lecture from him, and an even weirder lecture on how he rates certain drugs. LOL. As I said, he is no saint, but he is not a shit either. Lastly, yes, he has photos even with my sister or me in the newborn wall. People loved to take pics of him holding the new family members, and he collected them and put them together when he got his own house.
My husband doesn't know I'm about to divorce him. This has been my plan for 6 years. This is by far the craziest thing I've done, and I can't believe I suffered all these years staying with this man just so I can survive financially. The start of our marriage was wonderful. We had 2 babies. After the second pregnancy, he cheated on me with a very close family member. He gave me a lazy apology, and on top of that, he complained about my body. He also told me I was built like a refrigerator, mind you. I was 4 months postpartum at the time. I secretly saw a family lawyer. To sum it up for you, I would be screwed leaving him. We only had $25,000, and that being split up is basically nothing for me. No Marshall properties, no car. I didn't have a job. Literally nothing. I was a SAP. I applied for hundreds of jobs during the time and couldn't find employment anywhere. So leaving was a bad decision for me financially speaking, especially with 2 small babies. Also, alimony and child support wasn't going to be enough for me to live off of or survive with 2 babies with. So I let him believe that I forgave him, and I continued being his wife. The very first time he cheated on me, it was with my cousin. Then he cheated again. He had a one-night stand with a random girl he met on a night out. I got so mad, I cheated back on him out of anger. OFC, he never found out I cheated. At least I'm smart about it. Unlike him. During the time in our marriage, I worked on getting my independence back. My husband paid for my trade school. It was a very expensive program, but he paid for everything. We moved, and we bought a house with his income. He grew his money too during all this time, so he made far more money now than he did when I originally wanted to leave him. I started working recently, I have a career now. I'm so happy about that I haven't filed for divorce yet. He has no idea of my plans. I'm excited. I finally get to leave him after 6, almost 7 years. Now I can walk away with at least $200,000. And we have Marshall assets now, like the house and the car he also paid off for me. Now I have my education and my own career. I've been working on my weight loss. I lost 66 pounds he paid for my Terazepide. I had a breast reduction and a breast lift. I look amazing. I don't doubt I'll probably get remarried eventually. Everything in my life is finally set and going the right way, laughing at the people mad at me for cheating back on him. What did you expect to happen? I stay loyal to my husband while he fucks other girls? Lol, you guys think I'm going to just go without sex for almost a decade. The marriage was already over the first time he cheated on me. Update. I did tell him I'm divorcing him. You know what's the funny part? He was honestly shocked that this happened as if he didn't do anything wrong. He told his parents on me because I'm really close with his parents, and he thought they could persuade me to change my mind. His parents are sweet, however, they turned on me quickly and told me off for leaving their son. They let me know what he did was unacceptable, but what I'm doing is even worse by leaving him and a family behind. My husband cursed me off after the divorce news. He also called me a gold digger and went on a rant about how women only want money and blah blah blah. He also called me a slut because I went out with my girls and boys who are my close friends and we went to the bar and celebrated my divorce. Anyways, we are in the middle of a divorce now. It's a process. We both still live in the marital home until further noticed as noticed by the attorney. We will both have the 50-50 custody, most likely a rotating schedule. One of my kids is taking the divorce really hard, even though he knows what happened and he's begging us to stay together and how he doesn't want us to get a divorce. Honestly, I did feel pretty bad after my son begged me not to divide up our family and to stay with their dad. But I know at the end of the day, I need to be selfish and put my needs above everyone else's for once in my life. My son does hate me, though. He won't talk to me and spends most of his time with daddy. My other child is younger and doesn't fully understand what's going on and is just kind of brushing it off. My son just keeps saying he doesn't want divorced parents and he wants us to stay together and he doesn't want step-parents. My son is really taking it hard. He is also saying that he wants to spend most of his time with his father if I go through with the divorce, and I just told him that's not how it's going to work, and we will both spend time with him, and he keeps saying it's not fair, and he doesn't want to stay with me.
AITAA for exposing my parents when they forgot about me on their wedding. My parents were married a couple of weeks ago in Hawaii, and they invited my siblings and a few friends, but forgot to include me in any part of the planning, the ceremony, or the trip. So I exposed them on social media, and now they are furious. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent even if no one is listening. So I, 17F, was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, 50, proposed to my mother, 49, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even tough they were already together before. Everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii, with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25F, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, 22M, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other, shopping and socializing. So they had a very close bond, and the same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself on my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest on their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially, it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3F. So that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party, or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up on all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out, so I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything, about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready, because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second, and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there, even though I was the only person in my family without stable income. I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple other friends that were attending the wedding but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it and that they can just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her, "Then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding. And it was about the fact that I was excluded for literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me. Like, that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant, "Fine," and went to my room. Next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Insta and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side and others couldn't believe it and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family. And I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better, though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. Update 1. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. My grandma, 77 years old, did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but is hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I am always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me. and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100%, and told me to take it easy but make plans for my future and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position, and we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then. But my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apologize saying that he didn't know I wasn't included and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip. And then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first they berated me and were furious with me, and after that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her. And I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane. So I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay, but she wouldn't listen and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she is able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or at the very least help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon, and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know. I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling. So for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress. And I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. Engel, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her. But she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes, and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days, and once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip but also for years now, how my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened, how I was scared about my future but my N. One priority at the moment now was to move out of that house, even at the expense of my schoolwork. How I have made arrangements to move in with my friend, and I was looking for a job. And I told them about this post and how some people thought I might be an affair child, and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore, and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child, and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me, and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff but not me. And I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with, and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off. So that had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education. But that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it, and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all, but I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise, all my life. I went to private school. I have a rather large monthly allowance. I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far, and how, being dependable on them all my life, made me so exposed to losing everything, and I want to be independent now. Not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life, TBH. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore. And I accepted that, but I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door, but before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quiet down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red, and my mother was sobbing like a child. And when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said save it with the coldest tone I could muster. And my dad said that I didn't have to be jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them, and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them, and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess, and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandma was having none of that BS because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face, and they were coming up with this things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then. But my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself. And I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents. But she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day, we went with my friend, her parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move. And immediately upon arriving, my grandma said, "Absolutely not." I knew from pictures that the studio was very, very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful since grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space in my friends. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a doc for what I had done. But before she could say anything else, I hanged up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection on the days since Grandma called and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty. Update 3. To do a recap where I left, I moved to my friend's house after my grandma visited me, and we were able to stand up against my neglectful parent. My grandma and uncle left just a couple of days after I published my last update, and it was a very emotional moment for us both. For the first time in my life, I felt protected and loved with someone of my family. I'm sure throughout my life there must have been moments where I didn't feel so down and alone, but that week I spent with Grandma, I truly felt like someone was in my corner unconditionally, and I'll be forever grateful to her for being there for me. After she left back to her hometown, I got settled in my friend's parents' home while we looked for an apartment. She was already working as a private tutor for young kids, and she helped me get the same job as her. So now we are also co-workers. The job is great, and the salary is quite nice for a first job, so I was over the moon to be hired. We also found an apartment, is near campus, has 2 bedrooms and a nice living area and kitchen. It's not big, but it's clean and in a neighborhood that is primarily college students living in it, so it's quite nice, and there's plenty of cool spaces to hang and meet people. We're actually just in the process of moving right now, and I'm writing this update from my new bedroom. I celebrated my 18th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. I went to a restaurant with a few friends and had a nice time. The only drama there's been so far with my parents since the whole debacle is that they showed up in my friend's home the day of my birthday asking to see me. I wasn't there at the time, but my friend's dad was. And he told me that they were both very apologetic and asked him to get me in contact with them. They left a letter with him in which they basically acknowledged that they have been awful parents, but they want to rectify their mistakes and begged me to talk to them. Maybe I'm cold for doing what I did next, but I decided not to answer them in any way and asked my friend's dad to tell them to leave if they ever show up, which he respected. A part of me wanted to go to them and try to mend our relationship, but I also felt like it had taken all of this effort for me just to show them I exist and how much they've hurt me through my life, and if I go back now, I'll be betraying myself and all the work I'm putting on growing and becoming an independent person. After my birthday, I had a couple of weeks before we could start moving into the new apartment, so I went to visit my grandma at her house. I showed her the many pictures I took of the new apartment, told her all about my new job and the classes I'm about to start after New Year's, and she was so happy for me. We had a family get-together to celebrate my birthday too, and my uncles and cousins came to Grandma's, where we had a bit of a party. My brother also came. I've slowly been talking more and more with my brother. Of all my immediate family, he is the only one that has never treated me badly. And although he was neglectful towards me and enjoyed my parents' favoritism, he never treated me bad. And I feel like he was also a victim of the toxic environment that was our house. I don't trust him fully, but he has apologized very sincerely. And since he lives near me, he wants me to feel like I can rely on him if I ever need something. I do feel safer knowing that I got at least one family member in my city that is worried about me and would help me if needed be. I asked him once how my parents were doing, and he told me that, ever since I left, he himself has limited a lot contact with them, and he blames them for the whole situation. Whereas my sister insists that I'm being selfish and causing pain on my parents because I'm the problem. Not sure how that works. My parents also seem to have been somewhat ostracized by many of their friends after news of what happened to me got out. But according to my brother, they are constantly asking for me and are now saying to anyone that might listen that they fucked up and don't blame me for my actions. But they want to rectify their mistakes. I don't know if I buy this act, and I feel like they know that now the best thing they can do for their reputation is to try and put the ball on my court in regards to reconciliation so that they can look like they've done their part. I'm now more than ever focused on my future, and I don't really want to think of them. I go to therapy, and I'm trying to grow and embrace the love of my newfound support system. My friend, her family, my grandma, my uncles and cousins, and maybe my brother, I hope. AITA for turning down the birthday gift my mom's boyfriend gave me? I, 14F, am kinda confused if I'm in the wrong here. I'm leaning towards that I am, but I want someone else's opinion. My mom started dating a new guy like 6-ish months ago, and I honestly never really liked him. I don't know how to explain it other than he just gives me weird vibes. I've been trying to be nice, though, because my mom likes him and I want her to be happy. He's been trying to make an effort with me, I think. He'll send me texts throughout the day and pictures. He tells me I'm smart and stuff too, which is nice. But I don't know. I'm just kind of uncomfortable with it. My mom says he's just being nice, but I don't know. Anyway, my birthday was a couple days ago and he got me a really expensive necklace. He also gave me a ticket to a show that I've been wanting to go see. And he said he has the other one and that we should go together. I just felt like it was too much. And I told him that I was really grateful, but that I couldn't accept them. He got really mad. And he said that he already spent the money, so I should just take it and go with him. But I really didn't want to. It ended with him yelling at me and me basically running away to my bedroom. My family thinks I was too mean and that he's just trying to bond with me. Update. I told my mom. It was really hard. I want to say I was brave about it, but I cried a lot and was really scared. She took me to the ER right after I told her, even though it's really not an emergency. I don't really understand everything that the doctors did, so please forgive me if I say anything wrong. They made me do a blood test, urine test, and they took some of my hair because they said that some drugs can be detectable for a few weeks after. The urine test came back already, and it was confusing, because at first they said it was PCP, but then they said that they did another test, and apparently there are traces of ketamine. So I don't really know if that means I tested positive for both, or if it was only ketamine. I mean, I've never taken either of those things, so he definitely drugged me, though. They said he probably gave me something else, too, because how I described it didn't seem like ketamine, but I don't really know what that means. Anyway, I guess we're waiting to see if anything else comes back. They also did a pelvic exam and some ultrasound thing. I don't remember what they called it. They said there was trauma, so I was either raped or assaulted in some way. I am, or was, I guess, a virgin, so there's no debate there. I also don't exactly know how they can tell, but obviously it's their job, so I don't really feel any way about it, but the social worker they brought in said I'm probably in shock. I told them I had gotten my period afterwards with bad cramps, but they told me that it was probably not actually my period, and just me bleeding from it. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm still in the hospital currently. I don't really know why. But I am. I'm at least staying till tomorrow, apparently. They want me to meet with a psychologist, and they were talking about starting me on some medication. As for police, they've been contacted, but my mom isn't telling me much. I had to answer so many questions earlier. Update 2. So if any of you were interested, you were right. My mom's boyfriend was trying to groom me. Apparently, for as much as my family said I was overreacting by turning down his gift, my mom didn't like that he yelled at me. Apparently, while she was pushing him for answers about why he got me something so expensive in the first place, he said something she thought was suspicious. Turns out he only started dating her because my mom had a picture of her, my older sister, and me on her dating profile, and he wanted to get to me, which is creepy. She said she's taking that picture off her profile now, but also she's not going to go on dates for a while, which I definitely feel bad about. I can't help but feel like it's my fault. Update 3. I was discharged from the hospital and am currently heading home. My mom had my uncle check the house for cameras this morning like suggested. Thankfully, he didn't find anything. I think I'm going to stop posting updates about everything. I'm not feeling like myself, and I am quite tired of the people PMing me to tell me I'm lying. I fucking wish I was lying to you. For all the questions people keep asking. No, I hadn't been taught much about child predators before this. I was taught stranger danger and to not let an adult touch my privates. And that's it. Maybe I'm an idiot for not learning more before. I mean, how dare I assume I was safe? Right? I can't change it now, though, and I know more now than I ever wish I had to. I don't know why my mom posted a picture of all of us on a dating app. Yes, all of us realize now it was dumb. I don't know why he outright admitted it. As I've said, I wasn't there for the conversation, and I just know what my mom told me about it. For those of you who were getting annoyed about the urine drug test thing, I did ask my doctor this morning about it, because I was curious too. He said they have had people test positive for ketamine in urine up to 14 days after taking it. The weekend I keep talking about was the 26th or 27th, which was 9 or 10 days ago. I guess technically not 2 full weeks ago, so apparently plausible. He also said the PCP was a false positive. The only positive I currently have is ketamine.
AITA for going behind my wife's back and telling her pregnant sister that she's being cheated on. I have been married to my wife for 3 years. I am 27 and she's 26. My SIL is 30 and my POS bill is 31. I always had a close relationship with my SIL. We are friends. Also has a decent connection between my bill. Not that close, but we often talk and get along. My wife and her sister didn't get along as much as you would expect from siblings. It wasn't just normal siblings rivalry, but constant fights and arguments. Anyway, 3 weeks ago when I was having dinner with my friends, I saw my bill with another woman. They were were just eating. I didn't think much of it. I wanted to go and greet him, but I kept talking to my friends. After a while, I saw that he gave a light kiss to this woman. I was so shocked, I decided to not confront him. And when I got back to my home, I told my wife everything. I told her that her sister's getting cheated on, and we need to tell her. My wife said we should talk to my Bill instead of telling her sister. And we should not break their marriage because her sister's pregnant. I was like, UTF? So what is she's pregnant? Her husband is a cheat. I tried to convince my wife multiple times that we should tell her sister the truth. I told her that I know you guys don't get along, but she's still your sister and this isn't right. But she asked me to stay out of it. I tried my best to convince my wife, but she either ignored me or said, we shouldn't break their marriage. I had enough of her, and yesterday I told her that I am coming clean to my sill. She and I have a great bond, and I can't and won't betray her, my wife said. If I tell her the truth, she will not talk to me, I replied. I won't talk to you either if you don't want to do what's right. Today, I told my sill the truth. I went to her place and told her everything. She was doubtful, and she asked me to leave. After a few hours, my sill called me, and she was crying and said, what I said was the truth, and she shouldn't have doubted me and kicked me. She said she's leaving. I asked her, where would you go? Do you have money? She said she does, but not that much. I wired her a bit and said she should call me if she needs help. And she thanked me and said she will only use the money I sent if it's necessary. Otherwise, she will return. My Bill called my wife, and well, my wife lashed onto me and said I ruined her family and her sister's life. I said, I thought the moment we got married, your family's mine and my family's yours? Anyway, why teef are you defending that pause so much? What about your sister? She didn't reply to me, and she's not talking to me either. I tried to talk to her and convince her that it was the right thing to do, but she wouldn't talk to me, so I said, fine, stay angry, and if you want to divorce me, then go ahead. I think I have nuked my marriage. Do not know if what I did was truly right. Update. It's been a few days since I told my wife's sister that her husband is a cheat. Just to clarify to all the burritos, no, I'm not in love with my Sil. I don't have any inappropriate relation feelings for her. I respect her, and she's family. In any case, yesterday I asked my wife why she is pissed and wanted me to not reveal the truth to her sister. I know you guys hate each other, but you guys are siblings. My wife said it's not our place to interfere. I asked, are you okay with her sister being cheated on? She said she isn't, but it will, and has ruined their marriage because of my stupidity. She's pregnant, and the child needs his father, and so does the wife. I was so shocked when she said this. Like, WTF. I asked her if I were to cheat on you, would you forgive me? She said yes. I also asked her if she ever cheats on me, would she hide it from me? She also said yes to that. I was so shocked. I asked her if she knows what she's saying. She said yes, and she's confident. Just because you had sex with someone else doesn't mean everyone else has to suffer and break the family. I had no words to say. I told her that I also sent my Sil money. She started screaming at me and said I shouldn't have helped her, despite knowing she doesn't like her sister. I said, if that's what she thinks, then it's better if we just divorce. She got angry and screamed, fine, and started packing her bag. I tried my best to stop her from leaving. I told her that I love her, and I just did what I felt right. Nobody has to suffer betrayal like this. She said wasn't the right time, I asked her. So when should we tell her the truth? After she gives birth? Because it will worsen her PPD. Or years after she gives birth? She will just blame us. She said we should have just kept quiet and left it alone. I tried so hard to stop her, but she didn't listen to me and left. I tried to contact her and her parents, her friends, but they don't know where she is and instead started interrogating me and saying I am her husband and I should have taken care of her and I should know where she is. I even visited my Bill to confirm my suspicions, but I didn't see her car or her belongings anywhere. I hate that I am being blamed for just revealing the truth and my wife leaving me right away without a second thought. I was so damn pissed. So today I called my Sil and told her that she can stay at my place because I am going to my parents and my wife left, and nobody knows where she is. She told me she will try talking to her parents. But after a while, she called me and said that their parents don't know where she is. I told her to think about herself and come over and stay here instead of blowing up her money. Now I am at my parents and my Sil is in our home. Maybe I was being petty.